Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, or just before afternoon, depending on where you're from. Um, Very excited about today. If you've seen the emails that have gone out, obviously you have because you registered for the webinar and are now attending. Um, this was a opportunity to present something to you that was definitely unique and different than other things that we've done in the past. So we're very excited about it. We hope you get as much out of it today as we expect you to, because it's not necessarily us talking or sharing our ideas. It's not a carrier representative today. Today we have Amy Herrick joining us, who is in your shoes and specializes in the area of planning that she is going to be speaking about today. So a couple of housekeeping notes. Everybody is on mute, but we will be using the chat function throughout the webinar today. So I'll be monitoring that throughout. If you have questions, go ahead and throw those questions in the chat function. If they're relevant to the current topic, then we'll jump in and maybe answer them now. If it's best to wait until the end, then we'll do that as well. Amy has also put a couple messages in there already, so if you haven't checked those out or seen those right away, please make sure you do because it's important information. We are recording. We would like to make it available to all of you, so stay tuned for that. Other than that, I think I've covered everything. The last piece of advice I would give to everybody as you listen, I know from doing these in the past that no matter what audience we have, the audience is usually diverse in the area of their experience around the topic that we have. And I would say that this webinar isn't going to necessarily make you an expert in anything, especially a complicated and nuanced area of planning. But the idea here is to give you conversation ideas from somebody that is actually having these conversations all the time. And we'll talk about specific areas of products that we distribute that apply to some of these planning situations, maybe at a high level today, but certainly myself and my team of experts will be available afterwards to go into more details in those situations for you. So without further ado, I am going to turn over the presenting privileges to Amy and let her take it away as soon as I find the button again. There it is.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you today. We're going to do just a real quick thing here to get started on the screen. To start from the beginning. All right, we're going to be talking about, this is based on the book that I've authored, which is Small Business Ownership Mistakes. And there is a link that is over in your little box off to the side. And one of the things I need to do here is to be able to see the chats. And I'm working with two screens, so there we go. Now, off of this, I always give a real quick disclosure. You understand that these are general concepts because all of our clients are unique and they have unique situations. We're not giving you any kind of specific legal or accounting advice. You want to call in other advisors. And this particular content, I'm requesting that you don't share it unless it is through financial brokerage. So as we continue to go on, what are some of the topics that we're going to cover today? Well, positioning the agent as the authority is one of my primary goals in trying to teach you some of these techniques that can make a difference in the book of business and then also what you're able to provide. In most cases, someone has failed to establish the clear future ownership of the business, and we want to be very proactive as the authority to change the destiny of some of these companies going forward. It does not matter if they are a sole proprietor or they have a partner. We're going to talk about funded buy-sell agreements. We're going to talk about funded disability buy-sell agreements, which is something that I see is usually ignored. So that may be new to some of you. Many of you are familiar with tax-free lump sum critical illness benefits and disability coverage. We're going to talk about key position. I'm also going to talk to you about exit strategies for the owner. And then another thing that if you're not familiar with, there is a tool that financial brokerage has that you could get a quick valuation on a company if you were just trying to put some numbers together. A lot of things that we're going to cover. But the first thing that I really want to impress upon you is one of my goals is to help establish the agent as the authority in these conversations. And you're going to see a little later how I'm able to position and do that. Because in reality, it is my opinion that it doesn't matter what the crisis is. Who is the person who is responsible for getting the biggest check into the hands of the insured? And that is the agent. That's because you've taken the time to do the fact finding, to do the applications, to get the coverage in force. And our job is to solve problems for our clients before they ever happen. Now, who am I? I'm Amy Herrick. I'm an author. I'm at CHFC. I've been an agent since 1991. So you can call me the out-of-town expert. And it's the author of the book. So you could use that as a third-party resource. But I also want to share my knowledge because you are my community. Now, moving along, let's talk about, oh, we went a slide too far. My clicker, here we go. The other thing that I want to impress upon you is you need to know who the real decision maker or the real decision-making partner might be. That may actually be a spouse. It may not be the owner of the business, or you may have one partner who takes much more of a lead than the other. So I'm going to encourage you when you're starting these conversations and you're getting deep into them, make sure that you are dealing with the real decision-making partner, because you can waste a lot of time and effort in the wrong place and then have to start over and do your presentations and your discussions all over again. And if they were not receptive, it can be a waste of your time. And we don't want to do that because, again, we are establishing you as the authority. A couple of true or false questions. You know, we are two equal partners, and then I get one vote and you get one vote when we have to make a decision. The one key thing, and when we're going with partners, is if I have a yes vote and I have a no vote, then the answer is always no. Do you think that's true or false? Well, I think it's true, because anytime we do not have 100% agreement on going forward, we're at a stalemate and we have to put this away and revisit it, or it may never get revisited. Another misconception, if we have 5 partners, that means we will always have a yes or no answer to every vote. Do you think that's true or false? I'm going to tell you it's false, because I can have 5 partners. They may not necessarily all have an equal percentage of ownership, or they may or may not have voting rights. That's why it's important to always know who are your key decision makers. And it's a misconception that every partner will automatically have an equal vote because of voting and non-voting shares, and then also who has the majority. Every ship needs a captain. Every business needs somebody who is making the final decisions. Now, some of you may be thinking, and this may be you too, that, well, I don't have a partner. I am single. I am a sole proprietor. Well, now what I do? In many ways, that's much simpler, because we have exactly one decision maker. And with that decision maker, we are looking to protect their financial base. And then also we're looking at transitioning the business elsewhere. In my opinion, the very first thing that you're going to do with a sole proprietor is you're going to protect the income stream first. My business owner's ability to get up, go to work, and continue to manage staff or create income is the absolute biggest asset they have, and everything hinges on that. So that should be something that you're looking at right off the bat, is how are we protecting the owner's income stream? Many of you have seen these charts before. Depends upon your client on how helpful it is. I do not believe in selling to the fear tactic. I do believe in working with clients, and we're operating in most cases on the rose-colored glass scenario. As long as everything goes well, this is how it's going to go. But sometimes we have to take the rose-colored glasses off, which is plan A, and we've got to shift to a plan B. You know, what if things don't go exactly as we had planned, or even a plan C and a plan D? Many of you have access to these types of numbers that will show an individual, depending upon what their ages are, what the likelihood of a long-term disability is. And for most people, it's quite staggering. It also goes back with the duration of benefits. I am really opposed to short-term disability policies that will only go for a year. I really prefer 5 years or into the retirement age if at all possible, because the statistics tell me that we need it for much more than a few weeks. And for many of the clients that I've worked with that are younger, seeing some of these numbers and then asking, can you name some individuals that or within your family, because the odds are high, or someone that you've worked with that things didn't go exactly according to plan. The other statistic that is, something else, the duration of the disability. So you have numbers if you want to include something like that in a presentation. But again, my focus is not on the scare tactic. It's more on the educational basis, which then sets us up for being able to put the program together for the client. Everything is changeable until I get one stroke of a pen on a death certificate. At that point, we cannot make a different decision. And in working with clients, it's important to go back to the rose-colored glass scenario is A, but I'm working on plan B. Hopefully we won't have to implement it, but statistically, the odds are we are going to need to implement a plan B, whether it is a death certificate or it is because of an illness or an accident. So in my mind, I am working with clients, and this is not if this is going to happen. This is an issue of when is this going to happen to you and your business. Now, with the stroke of a pen on a death certificate that instantly changes everything, the first thing that happens is, well, who are the new partner or partners? Did they know this before they became a new partner? In many cases, that's going to be something that is handled in a will, or it's going to be handled in a trust. If you have a business owner who hasn't taken the time to do a will, well, the jurisdiction they live in has already written the will. And depending upon that jurisdiction, there is an assumption. For example, we'll do a male business owner. I'll do female and some other examples too. I have a male business owner. He is the sole owner of the business, or maybe he has a partner, 50-50. He doesn't have a will. Well, the state that he lived in has now designated that his wife is going to inherit 1/3 of the business, and his minor age children are now going to inherit 2/3. That may not be the partner that the remaining partner had in mind, or it may not be practical to run the business. So again, when is this decided? Well, at the stroke of the pen, things have already been put into place. So it will be a will if they have one, a buy-sell agreement if we're really lucky, but that's something that you're going to start positioning yourself as the authority on, or the law of the land. The next question becomes, well, what is this business worth? I can tell you that a business is worth a lot less with the stroke of a pen if there's no planning in place, because employees start leaving the business like rats running off a sinking ship because they're afraid of their future and they have their own families to take care of. One of the worst things I can come up with is, my cousin's ex-boyfriend who worked in a business like that says it's worth $1 gazillion. One of the ways that I have been able to bring some of my business owners back down into reality of what a business is worth is to ask them, how much do you think your business is worth? Oh, well, it's worth $1 million. Really? Oh, all right. You must have a reason for thinking that. And you can have a little conversation. And then I circle back to a conversation about, I was interested in the value of your business because there's someone that I'm aware of who is a little far away from you geographically, but they've got similar dynamics. If you were going to expand your business and you were going to buy another one very similar to what you have, what would you be willing to pay for it? Oh, I wouldn't give anybody more than $250,000. This will help you establish whether the business owner is in reality or if they're in fantasy, and can go back and support even using some of the small free tools that are available through the brokerage to get a valuation on the business to help frame you as the expert, but also to get some real numbers for you to be able to work with. Another thing that many businesses are not remembering at this point that you need to bring up are, do they own digital assets? Because this is going to affect estate planning, but as a part of the business. There are some new laws that are on the books at present that deal with the digital assets on who has access to those after the owner's death. In many cases, they need to file forms if they've got a Pinterest, Twitter, website, domain names, Facebook pages, because the area of commerce, as we all know, has changed dramatically. And those are also assets of the business that may need to be handled specifically that you could alert them to at that point. Don't give legal advice, but at least bring it up. Now, the small business ownership mistake and how this book and this webinar were designed to help you is because I want to teach you how to frame the discussions with the business owners that are at a high level. I want you to be able to educate the owners, whether it is through the book or through yourself. It gives you a way to do that, and it also is in Kindle versions. And you're going to see how we can fill in the blanks at the back that were put in on purpose to help you be able to educate the client, let them see themselves in some of the very simple examples, but then have the blanks to fill in the back, which helps us do a checklist of where the gaps are that we can fill, which is designed to help you sell more business. This is a cover of what the book looks like, so you could use this as your guide so that you have it as a reference, or it's something that you could order copies and you could pass those out to prospective clients, again, with the goal of how are we going to increase our sales. This is a quick picture of the table of contents, and there is everything in here that I've put in about who do I want to leave my interest to. I've thought about employee stock ownerships. What are some of the pros and cons? Sole proprietors, buy-sell agreements. There's disability buy-sell. What about the financial house in order? Remember those key positions that can make or break a company? We're going to do an example on that a little bit later. What types of insurance does my business need? So you'll see by the page numbers, this is not a war and peace novel. It's very short because business owners are busy, but it gives them the opportunity to learn from a third party, because of course we're doing the education on the client. And then the most important thing at the back is the conclusion checklist. Even if they choose not to read or look at all of the chapters, this is where we go back and we can start doing some of our fact finding in a very, very easy way. We name of the business, what kind of business, what's the structure, how many partners do we have, what are their names, and who are their potential heirs? Because on each one of these partners, there needs to be the discussion of, well, where are you planning on leaving your business share to? This may be an eye-opening revelation for the other partner who frankly doesn't want to be in business with your wife or your kids, which frames the discussion for buy sells and some other things. So this page is important in starting to set the stage for how many players may be involved, and then also to find out who is the key player who is going to be making the decisions, or is it joint? The next couple of pages is where I mentioned to you that I want to position you as the expert. Do you notice at the top of the page where it says experienced independent insurance agent I want on my financial team? Because this will be a team approach, but it's important to be positioned as a part of the team. They're going to need a business attorney if they're going to be putting legal documents in place, whether it is for the business or on a personal level. They probably have an investment advisor because there might need to be some changes on beneficiaries. For many of you, you are also dealing in the securities realm where you're dealing with fixed products on fixed annuities or dealing with the equity indexed annuities. We'll touch on that a little bit. You may end up carrying 2 of these roles, but it may be 3, but we definitely want you to be the one who is bringing this to the forefront as the expert. You'll see down below where I said we need these particular items, and I have listed all of the different things that we have been able to educate the client about. And the important area is, has it been secured? These are also documents that even if they have it, Let's pull it out and let's look at it and let's see what it actually says to see if it needs a little maintenance. Maybe it needs a little updating, or the provisions that were written in it really don't apply anymore. And if you are in a position where you can do some of the investment sides, you'll see that I've included the company sponsored retirement plans. I need or we want these items, and do we have them? Also an opportunity for some of the individual plans that are available. I did not include in this the individual 401k. It really depends on the situation. We're going to go through a couple of quick case studies because I think that's a great way for individuals to understand the concept. These are both carried in the book. With my goal with the book on the client is to help see themselves and to see how we can put some solutions together. So on case study number 1, we have a buy-sell agreement in place and we have a disability buy-sell agreement in place. My partner number 1 is age 44 and earns $100,000 a year in salary. I usually use round numbers just because they're easy to work with. We have $1 million of company-owned life insurance with the company as the beneficiary because we want to avoid the unholy triangle. If you don't know what that is, that's another conversation we should have, because you can check any life insurance policies that the company has, and if that's a problem, again, positioning yourself as the expert, it can be fixed. We have a $2 million of privately owned life insurance. The spouse is the beneficiary. Again, this is an opportunity to check to see the ownership to make sure we avoid the unholy triangle. We have $1 million of company-owned lump sum disability insurance with a 180-day elimination, $500,000 of critical illness lump sum benefit owned privately, $500,000 of critical illness lump sum benefit owned by the company, and $5,000 a month disability income with a 90-day elimination period. And again, remember we talked about the rose-colored glasses scenario? This is plan B and C. We are planning for in the event that a partner passes away, but I'm also covering what if a partner becomes injured or disabled. Can we exit them out of the company but still give them the financial resources? Partner number 2 is identical. The only difference here is they're 47 years old. Identical salary, identical products that they have. Well, partner number was believed to be in good health. They passed the exams, never had a problem, but they surprised everyone when they had a massive heart attack at age 44. They were found to have other previously unknown coronary issues that would require multiple surgeries and significant recovery time in between surgeries. What happened? Well, within the first 30 days after filing claim forms and verifying eligibility for benefits, he received a tax-free check for $500,000 from the private lump sum critical illness policy had in force. Within the first 30 days after filing claim forms and verifying eligibility for benefits, the company received a tax-free check for $500,000 from the private lump sum critical illness policy the company had in force. Now they have got additional cash in the bank to do whatever's needed. From 0 to 90 days, the company continued to pay his monthly gross salary because that would still be deductible to the company, and that's why it's for 90 days. After 90 days, and for as long as he needs to recover, his individual disability policy pays him $5,000 tax-free every month. Now, I mentioned earlier on that this was going to be a long-term issue. Well, remember we had that disability buy-sell policy in place? Well, at the 181-day mark, the claim forms were filed and the claim verified to enable the company to receive $1 million tax-free to buy out his share of the company in cash. So I want to recall on the second slide, remember that we've got $1 million of tax-free cash to buy out his share of the company. At about the 9-month mark, the valuation method agreed upon in advance had been calculated and delivered. A closing was set where he received $876,000 in cash for his share of the business interest sold to partner number 2. Now, the business no longer needed the $1 million of life insurance it owned on the partner number one who had the heart issue, now that it owned his business interests. So they offered to sell him the policy for $100 if he wanted it. And if not, they were going to cancel it. Well, of course he bought that policy because his ability to be insurable going forward has now been jeopardized. So he is able to retain that for his family if he wanted it. Now, partner number two has become the full owner of the business. He was free to reorganize, bring in a new partner, or sell the enterprise if he chose to do so. So do you see how every one of those pieces had a place in securing the future for both partners and their families and protecting the business from implosion or from employees running because they thought there wasn't anything that was going to happen here? This company was well positioned to continue regardless of the path that they chose. Now, this is a real quick question. And so, Tim, you're just going to have to watch the box over there. So did anyone count them? All right. So did anyone count the number of policies required to cover the needs in this scenario number one? So is it 5, 8, 10, 12? Quickly type in your answers. And then while you're typing your answers in, I got an idea for you. For those of you who are working with some of the disability and some of the products that are out there, consider adding the return of premium where possible. Where I find this is a good positioning, especially on disability, is if they need the disability policy, of course, they would receive the benefits that's far in excess of the premiums paid. But if they never turn in a claim, they could get back up to 100% of their premiums when they're closer to retirement or they no longer need the policy. I just had that call last week with a client who is retiring. He didn't need it, but this is going to be an additional nest egg that he can use going into retirement. And another example is all of us have car insurance. I believe we're probably all drivers in the audience. How many of you have ever looked at a policy that gives you 100% of your car insurance back because you never had a claim? So this is another way that you can be the authority and a great benefit to the client. So Tim, what did we get for answers? Did 5, 8, 10, or 12? Did any of them have a winning number?
Well, Amy, we did not actually have any submitted answers, so I am questioning whether or not I have messed something up technically, which is always a likely possibility.
That's okay. Well, all right. Well,
everybody answered to themselves, and maybe they'll
all right. Well,
find
maybe
out
they're not
shortly
used
whether
to
they were
interactive.
right.
Yeah, they're not used to interactive. Well, folks, there will be a little interactive. So if your chat works, please feel free to participate, or you can just say it out loud to yourself. So Tim, how many policies did you think it was?
Well, I thought maybe it was 12, but there's also the possibility that I have cheated and knew the answer ahead of time.
I would never say that. Yes, the answer is 12 because we were covering both life insurance, disability buyout, and disability and critical illness. So yes, it was quite a few policies, 6 each, but we had a very comprehensive result that became as a result of that. So now I'd like to take you into, yeah.
I'm sorry, real quick. In case I have messed up the chat function, I indicated in there a little while earlier that financial brokerage does have access to these critical illness lump sum and disability buy-sell lump sum products too for these types of planning scenarios. So Leonard Berthelsen is normally our expert in that area. While he's been out on planned medical leave, I've been filling in by showing everybody how much of a lack of an expert I am in the area. But just so everybody is aware, we do have access to those.
Yeah. So there's nothing that I'm showing you here that your financial brokerage partner isn't able to help you with. So when you're looking at everything from case design to the products, this is an excellent resource for you. And of course, you can always bring in the guy from out of town too, or collaborate. And on some of you, it may make sense to collaborate on a couple of cases so that you really learn this. And I am always been a real supporter of collaborative work. Share a little bit of commission sometimes, because you know it's much better to get the case, even if you're learning, and learn that, and then you can do it on your own going forward. And someday you'll get a chance to teach somebody else. So are you ready to go on to case study number 2, Tim?
I certainly am.
All right. I'm going kind of quick because I know we have an hour, folks. Now we're looking at case study 2. You know, you're going to see this is very similar. I've still got the buy-sell agreements. I've got the disability buy-sell, little different ages. I've got partners who own life insurance, privately owned. We've got lump sum disability, you know, all of the similar things that you saw in case study number 1, but now we're in case study number 2. 2 different people, but identical. I made it that way on the dollar amounts just to make it easy. Well, partner number 2 dies in an auto accident. Here's what happened. Within the first 30 days after filing claim forms and verifying death had occurred, his widow received the $2 million of life insurance proceeds that had been secured. Within the first 30 days after filing claim forms and verifying death had occurred, the company received the $1 million of life insurance proceeds. And I bet you can already see where I'm going. At about the 3-month mark, the valuation method agreed upon in advance in the buy-sell agreement had been calculated and copies delivered to all interested persons. Now, in this case, 4 adult children were named as equal 12.5% new share owners of the deceased partner's 50% business interest. I don't know about you, but as a business partner, I would not want to take on my partner's 4 adult children who probably don't work in the business and don't live in the area. Now, because we had this buy-sell agreement in place, each new owner had already contributed his or her personal share of the cost of the appraisal in advance based on the terms of the buy-sell agreement that was put in place. A closing was set where the deceased partner's 4 adult children, now owners as named in the will, split the $1,013,000 in cash for their inherited share of the business interest sold to partner number 1. Now, this may have been named in the will, but let me give you a hint. That buy-sell agreement overrode the provisions in the will that instructed this was what's going to happen. But I find in many cases it will be duplicated or it will be put in the will in the event the person has not done the buy-sell agreement and it is a worthless piece of paper because it was never executed. It's a better method though. Now, partner number 1 added $13,000 of cash to the $1 million of insurance proceeds to own the business free and clear of any other interest. You notice that this owner is smiling. He successfully and easily avoided adding 4 new partners he didn't want for just a few $1,000s in a very short period of time. Now, the business no longer needed the disability other policies on the deceased partners, so they were simply terminated. The other policies on the remaining partner number 1 were kept in force while he explored how he wanted to structure the business going forward. But in the event that he died suddenly, before he had entered into a new buy-sell agreement with someone else, his widow and heirs to the entire business interest would have ample cash reserves to carry on and raise their minor-age children, and his widow could then sell the business for whatever she could get out of it if needed and still be well taken care of financially. So do you see how the comprehensive package, it doesn't matter what happens or when it happens, we have got exit strategies for everyone who's involved. Now, Tim, you knew the answer to the last question, and you should already know the answer to this one. So how many policies were involved again?
Oh man, I'm on the spot. I'm going to go with D12 again.
There you go. So again, it's similar setup, but very different results that came out. So anytime that we've got an unexpected disability or a major issue of a partner, we have a problem, but then we also have an opportunity. I mentioned the lump sum critical illness benefit, and we used that in one of our examples. And as Tim has said, we've got these products. These are designed to pay a tax-free lump sum benefit that is over and above and has nothing to do with health insurance that they have. You need to have a listed set of issues that happen, but think of the big things. You're thinking of cancer, stroke, heart attack, blindness, brain tumor. There is a very specific list, and this can vary a little bit and change between carriers, but it is something that I think is important for the individual to have to infuse cash, but it also can be important for the business to have. If I have an owner who is very involved in being a rainmaker, and that rainmaking is interrupted, this can be the difference in the cash flow for the business to be able to carry on. My other recommendation for these, anytime that the company is paying for these coverage, you want to be clear with the bookkeeper that these are not going to be deductible expenses. If we make them non-deductible expenses, anytime those proceeds are paid, then they are tax-free coming to the company. We do not want to give the company $1 million of tax-free income that they cannot distribute. In some of these cases, they're able to do some purchases and make changes that are deductible expenses that they would not have been able to do otherwise, but they're paying for them with tax-free dollars. So there are some very large advantages on how you structure those. The tax-free disability benefits, again, whether this is for the individual who is the owner or this is the individual who is the owner and is putting that in their personal account, it makes a huge difference. That discussion that goes back on the form about who are you leaving that business interest to in the will? Is it spouses, kids, other relatives? It's often a very bad idea, which is another reason to support why the buy-sell is important. Many times owners are thinking of, well, I want my kids to have it so they can continue to get an income off of it. The kids don't always want the business, they just want the money. And we need to have a way to get them out of the business because they cannot continue to take the same wages as the owner when they're not contributing. And again, decisions made by committee are not always easy to happen. A buy-sell agreement, why no savvy business owner would want to operate without them, we've already seen, because we want to have a different result. But what if a person is the business? You know, you're a sole proprietor. Well, let's look at this a different way. Just because you're a sole proprietor doesn't mean you can't have a buy-sell. I had one for many years that I put in place. I sought out a colleague and said, if we were to put a buy-sell agreement in place, I'm willing to go through the exams. You can own the life insurance policy. I pass away, the business comes to you. It's very cut and dried, and this would be taken care of. It would be a way for you to expand the business space if this is something you want. I had a colleague I could go to. Maybe you actually have a rival that business that could work because it's the person who could take the business. You need to have somebody who is capable of managing the business. What if you've got a long-term employee who could do it, but they don't have the money? Maybe you help pay for the life insurance contract, but as a part of the buy-sell agreement, they also have to reimburse the heirs for every dime of premiums that have been paid on that policy. It's a solution that I have seen work. Who could you talk to privately? You know, you need to think about that or offer some ideas to the owners. And then, of course, if you're going to put a buy-sell agreement in place or urge someone to help them do it, they need an attorney to draw it up, but then they also need to decide who's going to pay the premiums, who's going to own the policy, and make that very clean, because again, I'm going to reiterate, we do not want to get into the situation with the unholy triangle and make any of these proceeds taxable. What are the basics of a buy-sell agreement if it's something you're not familiar with? Well, it states who buys the company, who's selling the company, or the percentage of ownership in the company, what's the price, how the buyer pays for it, and when the sale occurs. Does it occur at death? Does it occur, you know, within 6 months? You can put provisions in it that make this a very workable document. I also like to include how are we going to value the business. Perhaps it's something as simple as a multiple of gross sales or a multiple of profit or some other number that you come up with. So each one of these can be customized regardless of what industry or business. Even if it is a completely web-based virtual business, there will be a way to value it and to put that in your buy-sell. So audience participation, we'll see if you can type or not. If not, Tim, you're the audience. Could you please tell me how much a buy-sell agreement is worth if it is not pre-funded?
Amy, I believe that I have discovered that the audience can see the messages in the chat, but are not able to respond to for some reason. So
Oh, rats. Okay,
clearly, I've done a great job of the technical side of things as usual. Um, and so
that's all
at the
right.
end, maybe
Emails work.
we'll open up the audio for people to ask questions at the end, um, and see how that goes. Um,
Okay,
but
so
if
Tim,
you'd
what
like
do you
me
think
to,
it's worth?
I would say that it is worth 0 if it is not
That's
proven.
correct. Because unless somebody's got a really big fat bankroll, and that is not what I'm generally seeing with my business owners, even if they do have a substantial reserve, all of a sudden it's in a retirement account, which is virtually untouchable because they are not going to spend that account and net $1 for $1.50 worth of an account value. It doesn't make economic sense. Now, a disability buy sell that we talked about, why no savvy business owner would want to operate without him? Well, we've seen that in the event of a disability or an injury, this is a way for them to exit out of the business gracefully and quickly, but immediately have the cash reserves to do a life do-over if necessary, based on whatever their new circumstances are. And they're also not pressured to try to go back and work into a company that they are not capable of doing at that point. All of us know the examples, whether it's clients or family members, where the world changed in the blink of an eye or in an instant, or the lack of a heartbeat for a short period of time. Those are the things that when you're putting these disability buy sell agreements in place, it is a life happening that we can still have a happy ending on, even if it wasn't the plan A that we had always planned about. A disability buy-sell agreement is structured very similar to a buy-sell agreement. However, it is a separate document and is specifically dealing with a disability buy-sell only. I do not recommend having both of those documents be the same because the world can change. I'd like a separate disability buy-sell and a separate regular buy-sell because they are indeed doing two different things and we are funding them with very different resources. You're going to go back to who buys it, who sells it, what's the price, how do we calculate that, how the buyer pays, and when the sales occurs. And this is going to be a very similar answer. You can have a disability buy-sell agreement put in place, but again, if it's not funded, I do not believe it's worth the paper that it's written on. It's nice, but it's never going to be executed. We need to spend a minute talking about key positions in a company. Should they be considered in the agent recommendations? Because often I see these are forgotten. A key person, if it's not something you're familiar with working with, because I don't know the dynamics of my audience when I'm doing these types of presentations, is it someone who generates a large amount of money, sales, design work, fabrication, or it's an important piece of an ongoing business revenue streams. Taking that person out of the equation, even for a short period of time, can cause a major disruption in the cash flow of the company. So that is a key person to me. And I'm going to give you 3 real life examples of having the right kind of coverage in place on a key employee to infuse cash into a devastated business could save the company from ruin when it needs to suddenly reorganize. We're off of plan A. Now we're definitely going into plan B and C. This was pretty tragic. 2 of your top 3 advertising genius salespeople were killed in a terrible chain reaction pileup on snowy weather on a highway nearby coming home from a huge presentation. You got the account, but now you have no one to service it or do the ongoing design work required. Remember, I said that 2 of the 3 passed away. Well, the coworker that survived was injured and traumatized. They are not going to be coming back and going to be able to work for you and pick up where they left off. Now, the rest of your employees are in shock because we've now lost 3 of our key team members. One employee was insured for $250,000 and the other for $500,000 in life insurance. So the company at least has $750,000 of tax-free life insurance proceeds to infuse cash into the company within days, because we're going to have death certificates and turn in the claims. So at least we've got a stopgap to figure out, what are we going to do with this dip in cash flow? Do we need to rebuild a sales staff? Do we need to get a headhunter on board, a bonus? What's it going to take to do a candidate search? But now we have got some money to take care of this. And a second scenario, your top machinist is unable to do the custom fabrication work he did before his recent cancer diagnosis. It will take many months of healing, invasive surgeries, and treatments for him to be able to rejoin your staff. After 30-day policy elimination period had passed, you now have $5,000 tax-free disability insurance payments each month coming into the company because the company owned this policy. You're generous. You give him 75% of this amount, which was $37.50 a month, and it will be taxable to him. And you keep the remaining $1,250 a month until he's able to return to his old job, just as a little bit of buffer to help bring someone on board. This is a very low amount for a machinist or a key person, but I wanted to put it into affordable numbers that you could visualize. This machinist or someone may only have wages to me of $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 a month, but they may be generating $30,000 or $100,000 a month for me. So the dynamics of that position are going to be very important. Now I'm going to continue it on for the machinist because I've seen these things happen. Do you remember this employee? Well, he happened to be married to the sister with 4 kids under the age of 12. He's the guy's brother-in-law. Also had put in place a $100,000 tax-free lump sum critical illness policy on him the business owned. Upon verifying the cancer diagnosis, the company received $100,000 tax-free to help with cash flow as you reorganized your work staff, searched for and paid for his replacement until he can return full-time. You're generous. You decided to give him a $25,000 deductible bonus to help him with all the medical bills because he'd worked for you for so long, and this is your sister. Now you don't have to figure out how to help your out of the workforce for years sister with a cancer-stricken spouse make financial ends meet. Now, you had also been able to work with the sister and her family, and they had individual critical illness and disability policies they purchased that they're receiving tax-free. Well, who do you think, Tim, is the hero in this situation?
The insurance agent.
Yeah, because who's the one that made sure the checks came in for businesses to continue and the lives to go on? So I am very passionate about the fact that we serve an enormous role in the business and the personal community because what we do really changes lives. And don't ever forget that. So Tim, being my audience participation, do you think anyone was financially ruined in any of these unexpected scenarios?
Not with the proper coverage in place.
No. Well, do you think the commissions earned on these policies were worth the agent's effort to be the authority on business and personal financial asset protection planning?
I would say so, yes.
And I want you to pay key attention to this words. If you guys are not using some of these, you may not think about it, but I believe that you are all personal financial asset protection specialists. You are protecting their home, their family's livelihood, you're protecting their income, you're protecting their business. All of those are assets, and the products that you provide are asset protection. And these policies assure that we don't have to liquidate other assets in order to take care of life events. And he already answered the question that, do you think the agent was a hero to these families? I think so. What do you think the agent was to the people who were watching these scenarios unfold? Because do you think that people who are blessed this way and they're going like, oh, we're going to be just fine. You can't imagine this is what our agent did for this. And you know, I was a little reluctant at first and it seemed like a lot of money, but I'm so grateful to have this. Have you ever had any endorsements like that? What are they worth to you? Quite a bit going forward. So we're going to do a quick recap. What types of insurance could a business need that you, the agent, could offer as solutions? Because again, I want to position you as the authority here. Well, we've talked about lump sum disability buyout to fund a disability buyout agreement. We've got life insurance to fund buy-sell on owners or for key employees. We have critical lump sum on owners and key employees. We have individual disability coverage, short-term and long-term. I did not cover air ambulance coverage in this discussion. It is another product that I highly recommend when I have individuals that do a lot of traveling, especially in rural areas or whatever. Most of the group health insurance or individual policies have a $10,000 limit on air ambulance. I know in my jurisdiction, it's a minimum of $25,000 to turn it on, and unless they have a payment with a credit card or something in advance, they will not always fire up the engine. So we didn't discuss it here. I don't think that financial brokerage offers that, but it is another dynamic that goes along with how do we protect the business. I am going to spend a quick minute here for a real story for some of you that this could make sense. Individual was injured. They were on a foreign assignment. They needed to get airlifted, and it was going to cost $100,000. The business walked around and begged every employee to give them their credit cards and tell them how much was on it, and they would make it right. But they had to come up with $100,000 to get this person on an emergency air ambulance from the foreign country that they were in to where they could get the care that they needed. Employees did it, and that employer made it right, but it cost them $100,000 to do it. You don't want to be in that scenario, but what do you think the employees thought of that employer? That is an employer who has your back, but they never dreamed that they'd be in that situation. Now, a really important tax planning note that I put in red: how premium payments are handled matters to the recipient. If they pay any of these things a pre-tax, or if it's employer paid, that affects the taxation, because when it is received, when the premiums have been paid pre-tax, all of the proceeds will be taxable. I always recommend that you pay with after-tax dollars, so all of the proceeds are tax-free. On my tax hat, where this is the most painful is if I have an individual who gets disability coverage and they've been paying it with pre-tax dollars. It's usually only replacing 60% of their wages, but it's still subject to income taxes. They may only net out with maybe 40 to 45% of their income, and that's going to be a huge hit on top of medical bills that have gone up. So how to obtain a quick business evaluation. Tim, do you want to jump in on that and let them know what's available there?
Sure. Well, I just tell you, at some of our carrier partners through their advanced markets department will provide access to third-party vendors free of charge for business valuations. And I can't actually tell you off the top of my head all the information that you need up front, but I don't, from my best recollection, I don't believe it's a whole lot of information to get something that's pretty quick and easy. So Amy, I guess I'm turning it back over to you.
Well, with many of the vendors that I have worked with, they have a very efficient fact finder, and most of us are used to a fact finder or an insurance app or something. But on that fact finder, you're able to get some of the key information and then send it in, and that's what they use to do the valuations. I've seen some of them that will have valuations, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 different methods. Some companies are better valued based on their assets, some are better valued based on their revenue streams. So it can give a variety of different ones and even average those together. So that part can be relatively easy. And Tim, when those are sent in, my experience has been, depends on how backed up the advanced markets departments are, but they've usually been very efficient. In my experience, I've usually seen them within a few days to 2 weeks. Is that pretty normal from what you're seeing at this point in time? Because COVID changed so much.
Yes, I would agree with that. They do come back very quickly. Sometimes, you know, depending on the carrier and, like you said, workflow, they can even come back the next day.
Yeah.
And I did have a question, not to put you on the spot too much, but one of the areas that have historically, or one of the business types that have historically been difficult to get a business evaluation on are either insurance agencies or financial planning firms.
Yep.
And I know that you and I have discussed the importance of not just the audience on the call today, but everybody in our area of the business to be able to do some of this type of planning on their own businesses. Do you actually have, if somebody were to reach out to you, a recommendation on how you valued your own business?
Well, there are different components to it. I did sell my securities practice in 2016. By the way, I believe all your businesses should be sellable from day one. I made the decision because of a perfect storm. I contacted someone, helped write up the contract. I had my company sold within 6 days and I had the first check in my hand. I don't know it all, but I know a lot. What you generally have to do is when you have a revenue based, such as trails, many of you have a life book, or you have securities where you've got trails, you can do a multiple of trails. Some of that can be affected by how young or old your clients are, because if you've got a book of trails and all your clients are over 70, well, unless you get all of their heirs, your books are going to disappear. So when we've got a revenue stream, usually you have to analyze the book to see what some ages are, and you'll use a multiple of what the commission revenue is. That is one of the things that usually works. There's also what I'll call some blue sky. If I have a book of business and there are younger and they're insurable and they're business owners, their businesses are up and coming, there is an assumption that there are going to be additional life insurance or other product needs there. So there was usually a blue sky number that's put on top of that for what is anticipated to be future sales that are as a result of having an inroad to that business, and every client that is on your books. Does that help just a little bit? Because everybody's dynamics are different. Some people have an accounting practice that would be valued completely separate and probably would be sold separately than their investment portion of the practice, which would be valued separately from the life insurance portion. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and thank you for kind of explaining that, because like all of the topics that you presented on today, it's a nuanced situation, and every business is unique, and some of the audience probably works in an area where there is renewals, whether it's like Medicare supplement or health insurance, and
Life
some might,
policy. Yeah,
yeah.
permanent life policies. There's lots of things. And with that, the other thing I encourage people to do when you have multiple branches to your business like I do is to be very specific in keeping those books separate. That is one of the things that has enabled me over the years to let go of an endeavor if I wanted to, because the books were not commingled. And if you haven't been doing it in the past, okay, start doing it, because that's going to help you have a very clear ability to do the valuation on a minimal amount of work. And it's also going to make it possible, if you needed to dismantle the business for a buy sell, whether it was for death or disability, you may not have one person who wants your dynamic, but they want a piece of your dynamic. And that makes it a sellable asset. Good question.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to challenge everybody who is listening. I can't impact the world, but if you have a business, and I don't care if you're the business, get a buy-sell agreement in place. I want you to have a disability buy-sell agreement in place, because I am also tasking you with the responsibility of, you have taken care of these clients. You know who they are. You love them. Let's tell the truth. Some of these people have been with us 10, 20, 25 years. You have a responsibility to make sure that the next person who steps in your shoes, because you can no longer take care of them, is a person that is going to honor all of that relationship that you had and continue to take care of them when you can't. So for those of you who don't have that in place, I am really going to step on your toes here and tell you, as an industry, we have a responsibility not to turn those people loose to whoever's lap they happen to land in that may not have their best interest at heart like you have all of these years. So that's my soapbox. So if I stepped on your toes, I am not going to apologize for that one. Selling qualified and non-qualified annuities for your retirement savings, again, depending upon what you have for licensing on the variety of the audience we're listening to. You may have opportunities for 401ks, Roths, individual 401ks, simples, IRAs, Roths, SEPs. So this can be another area of expertise in the business. And selling the non-qualified permanent life insurance policies. Many of you are familiar with the tax-free retirement income streams that can be created by overfunding the permanent policies. And again, that's something that Tim and all of the staff there can help with. So use some of the tax-free plans and promote your tax-free personal pension plans and let the owners know that they can do it for themselves. But here's another idea. What if the owner is not insurable? Do they have a spouse? Do they have an adult child? Do we have another person that we can put the life insurance on and still structure the payments to come out the way that we want? And in the event that the alternate insured passes away, what are we going to have? It's self-completing. We now have the tax-free retirement fund for the owner of the policy. So think outside the box at times. If we cannot insure the owner for health reasons to do what we want because of a rating or something else, maybe a spouse, an adult child, or someone else could be the solution to create the personal pension plan, just not on the original insured that you had in mind. And I think that is missed often. So you can't vote in the chat box. So I'm going to tell you to vote in Tim's email box, and you can razz me later for that. If you'd like to see more of these kinds of events in the future, let him know, or if there are some other topics that would be helpful, because we really are just targeting the business owners. And again, this is at a very high level. I want to thank you for being at the presentation at this point. If I have been a blessing to you, I would encourage you to go to the link, or you can go to Amazon.com, put my name in, and this book is available. The softcover edition, I'll do my plug, is $14.99. It's a very affordable. If it's something you wanted to do in bulk, or if it is an entirely different presentation that I do and have done for SBA and different things in my area for business owners to educate them what they need on this. And then I also there's a Kindle version. So you've got some options there if this is something that was a benefit to you. And so, Tim, I think we can go ahead and quit sharing the screen now, unless you want me to leave it up.
Oh,
It's
no,
up to
that's
you.
fine. And Amy, if you have a couple minutes, I do have, I think, a solution for people to be able to ask questions. You should, if you are an audience member, be able to raise your hand. I will then be able to see that, and I can unmute your line specifically. So if you have a question for Amy or myself, feel free to hit that, and I will unmute your line. That way we should be able to get some clean questions without too much background noise.
And then, Tim, did anything come to your mind while they're looking at raising their hands that you'd like me to address?
You definitely addressed the first question I really had, which was, and it's a question that I actually get a lot from the insurance agents, just about how to value their own business and do some of that planning there.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, or maybe something that I threw in the chat box that's not necessarily just a question, but maybe in general a thought. I definitely seconded the idea of purchasing copies of those books to hand out from a prospecting perspective. You can send those to potential prospects in the mail with a handwritten note. You can drop it off at their business with a quick conversation idea. But I think it's when you're trying to work in a market with business owners, it's just a really professional approach, I think, because the bottom of the book doesn't necessarily have your name on it. It's got Amy's name on it. So it's a independent third-party expertise that, as Amy highlighted, definitely sets you up at the end to become that expert for them in that area of planning. So I cannot think of anything else specifically at the moment. I'm just checking to see if we have any hands raised.
And use that fact finder at the back. I mean, even if you don't want to use it, use that, because that will give you the information you need to be able to have a meaningful conversation and know what needs done. And many of these business owners have no clue. You're my audience. How many of you really know all the answers for your business? So
yeah, and I did think of something, and to put you on the spot again. Obviously, when you start out in the business, whether it's on the insurance side of things or the security side of things, you probably don't just jump right into helping business owners with succession planning. So maybe for the audience, could you maybe share just a little bit more about how you got started in the market and how that helped you kind of get to where you are today?
I came out of the corporate world, and I've always dealt with finances. And in the corporate world, I've done everything from cost accounting to inventory control, office management, HR, tax planning, and I ended up working and going over to an independent financial planning firm. I was able to stay there for 2 years, and I did not fit their paradigm. And I went out on my own in '93. And so I've worked with individuals and small business owners. And at present, as what has grown for that, because I've owned and let go of businesses and things over the years, my company, thesecretprofits.com, is where I have put video courses up that business owners can go to, like you guys there. You know, my audience, you're all business owners, on how to help them retain more of their profits. Now, the life insurance is not something that I promote as much now, but I do see needs, and I'm having these conversations. I still have somewhat of a tax practice. It's by referral only. It's not anything I want to promote, although I'm really good at it for business owners. And with that, again, it's having those conversations. Look, I know how much you make. Where's the life insurance? Let me show you here's some things we need to do. And I find many of them really like the hybrid products, because sometimes doing the individual policies won't necessarily fit the budget. So that works. Another thing that I have found works, we only have so much money to go around. Let's pretend I've got a younger individual and I don't know, we need $3 million worth of life insurance. Well, in order to keep the costs down, I may want to do a 30-year level, or I may want to do a permanent, but we can't afford it. And you know, the guys get tired of me sometimes, but I may have an application that is $1 million at 30-year premium. I got $1 million, it's 20-year premium. I got $1 million, it's at 10 years, so that I can drop down the overall cost, because I'm really push the issue of, I don't want you to buy $1.2 million when you and I both know you need $3 million if you pass away. We got to have enough. Don't make me sit across the table and hand somebody a check that we both know was never enough. And so sometimes splitting up the coverage to drop down the premiums with the intent that maybe the kids will be a little older, we may not need this $1 million, or we'll replace it, helps to be able to structure some of the pieces they need. So at times you got to be a little creative.
Great. So we did get an audience member to raise his hand. John, I am unmuting your line, so hopefully you're ready.
Hello, John. Thank you for being brave. Nobody wants to be first. John will have to unmute his line too.
Yeah.
Your little microphone that's press.
We good?
You're good, John. I can hear you now.
Okay. Amy, I look forward to reading your book. I was a little late to the meeting, but I didn't understand the advantage of, as an individual sole proprietor, having a buy-sell agreement on myself, where I pay the insurance premium, I make a colleague or rival the beneficiary of that premium. I'm probably missed something there. Maybe it'll be answered in your book, but what was the advantage to that?
Okay, let me give you two scenarios. You're a sole proprietor and you have someone who is willing to go into the buy-sell agreement, and they have the means to pay for the life insurance policy to buy you out so your company doesn't implode. So does that one make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
That must be what I
so that one
missed.
makes sense. Now
Thank
let's go to this. Let me go to the second scenario. You're a small company, but you have got a right-hand person that could run that company if you couldn't, but they don't have the means to pay for the life insurance contract. You pay the premiums until they do have the means, and part of your buy-sell agreement says any premiums you paid on their behalf is paid in addition to whatever the buy-sell agreement. Maybe your right-hand person just came out of divorce and they're restructuring and there's no way that they can absorb this. But give them 2 or 3 years and they can take those premiums over. But it means that if you pass away or the disability, you got somebody to buy it out, take it off and run with it. You're taking care of your clients and you're making sure you have money in your pocket. If you don't care, then you just let the doors close and let it fall as it may. But we've done that a few times when there were very qualified employees or someone, but right now financially, they could not pay the premium. Does that help?
Yeah, so that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great question.
Thanks for the question, John.
Did I answer it so well that nobody has questions? Come on. I won't bite, I promise.
Well, I think, since I had a great April Fool's joke about 20 days too late and kept telling people to put things in the chat box that wasn't available apparently, maybe that dampened the mood for audience participation.
Well, maybe your email box will fill up. So feel free to reach out.
I did put that in there as well as the contact information for financial brokerage and our team members here on the sales team that would work with products relevant to these planning scenarios. So feel free to reach out to them or me or both. And Amy, I think we'll go ahead and let you go. We certainly appreciate your time, and I found it very helpful as I anticipated, and I'm sure our audience did as well.
All right, it was a pleasure. If I can be of service in the future, reach out. And if there's somebody else in the audience, I do a lot of different types of trainings and presentations. And if this is something that you have a need for, feel free to reach out. And if I can help you, I will. And if I'm not a good fit, then perhaps I can send you to someone who will be, because we all live in the world of Zoom now. It's our reality.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everybody,
Have a
for joining.
blessed day.
All right.